Hi everyone, I'm back. We've got The Hypnotists, chapter 28. The first part of Braintree's plan was to start the Opuses on the path to killing themselves. In other words, they had to deliberately trigger Dr. Miko's post-hypnotic suggestion. Even though Jax accepted that this was the only way to defuse the time bomb inside his parents, it was an agonizingly big decision. After all, at this moment, Mr. and Mrs. Opus were just fine. The notion of setting them on a course designed to murder them on purpose was unimaginably terrifying. You do it, Jax told Braintree. I might not have the guts. The two Sandmen brought Jax's parents out of their hypnotic state. Jax was still so disoriented by the blowback that he neglected to instruct his mother to forget recent events, and she came to herself angry. How dare you bring this witch doctor into our home and set him on your father? Just because you happen to have a talent for hypnotism doesn't give you the right to... He was so cowed by her onslaught that he overcame his fear and nodded to Braintree to give the trigger word. It might be the only way to stop her. Listuena, the old man announced, enunciating carefully, saying it carefully. Jax had expected at least a thunderclap in frantic action from Mom and Dad, but they was all very civilized. Mrs. Opus straightened her hair and picked up her pocketbook. Her husband adjusted his tie. Wordlessly, the Opuses shrugged into their jackets and headed out of the building to die. Jax and Braintree followed a few steps behind them. I can't believe they're so calm about it, Jax whispered, like they're going to pick up a loaf of bread. Braintree nodded. The response to a post-hypnotic suggestion is always very businesslike. Yeah, but they're going to kill themselves. They're responding to a series of specific instructions, Braintree admitted, and that's how we will save their lives. A neighbor greeted Jack's parents as they crossed the street at the corner. The Opuses looked right through her and kept on walking. There was a tense moment at the next intersection when a changing light separated the couple, and Braintree and Jax hesitated, unsure of who would stick with whom. In the confusion, Mr. Opus ended up a block ahead with both Sandmen trailing his wife. Frantic, Jack sprinted ahead and reacquiring the faint bald spot that was his father. A stalled delivery truck snarled in pedestrian traffic, allowing Mrs. Opus and Braintree to catch up. Jax could see it at the end of the block, the entrance to this Canal Street subway station. He swallowed hard, willing himself to concentrate through his continuing whirlwind of mesmeric images. Whatever was going to happen, it would have to be there. Stick with your father no matter what, the old man commanded. I'll look after your mom. Jax could feel a lump of ice in his stomach as he watched his parents descending to the concrete steps into the station. It looked so ordinary and everyday that this was hard to accept that what was coming. Jax was using his hypnotism now, even good at it. But nothing could have prepared him for this life and death moment. The Opuses swiped their cards and entered the station. Braintree followed close behind. Jax made for the turnstile and froze. At this critical instant, every move planned down to a split second. A dumb mistake was tipping the scale towards tragedy. His Metro card was on his dresser at home. His eyes darted to the fare booth where there was a long line. By the time he got through, at least one of his parents would be gone. Without hesitation, Jax vaulted over the barrier and ran for the flight of stairs down the platform. A hand grabbed him by the shoulder and pulled him back. He spun around and faced a burly transit cop. What's the matter, kid? You're too special to pay your fare like everyone else? A plea was formed in his throat, but at that moment he felt the earthquake-like rumble of a train approaching the station. Even if he could come up with the right words, there would be no time to save Mom and Dad. He stared at the man with laser-straight intensity, trying to conquer centuries of Opuses and Sparks' histories into one mesmeric blast. The cop recoiled slightly and then staggered motionless. Jack shrugged out of his grasp and sprinted for the stairs. As he flung himself off the bottom step, he could feel the blast of cold air coming from the tunnel just ahead of the train. The sight he beheld nearly stopped his heart. Mom stood on the yellow safety stripe, poised for flight. Braintree was right behind her, looking around wildly for Jax. In his desperation needed no explanation. He could save one, but not both. Heart hammering, Jack scoured the platform. At that instant, he was aware of no blowback. The entire universe had been distilled to one single vitally important question: where's Dad? The squeal of brakes from the oncoming train was deafening now. The headlights raked across the station. At that very last instant, Jack spied the familiar bald spot standing at the edge of about 20 feet behind Mom. Jax took a mad dash in the direction of his doomed father. The front of the train burst out of the tunnel. Dad crouched slightly, preparing to jump. No! Jax left his feet in a flying tackle as he clambered both arms around his father's midsection. He felt Dad's momentum pulling both of them over the edge. Still in midair, he heaved away from the onrushing train. The two of them hit the concrete, rolling backward from the gap as hundreds of tons of metal screamed into the station. Out of the corner of his eye, his cheek struck the platform, and he caught sight of Braintree screaming Monica Opus locked up against a trash bin. Dad was weeping and moaning piteously, pounding his fist against his son's chest and shoulders. To Jax, this was almost as upsetting as the near miss with the train. He had never seen his father so much as sniffle with emotion. Now, much less falling completely to pieces. A crowd of onlookers was beginning to gather around them, but Jax barely noticed. Braintree hustled Miss Opus over to her husband and son. Mom was weeping, and Dad's face was a mask of horror. "What's wrong with them?" Jax asked. "They're experiencing what it is to give up your life," Braintree whispered. "But they're fine," Jax protested. He noticed a bloody scrape on his father's chin. It was probably painful, but imagine the damage that if he hadn't done it. The train shuddered to a stop, and its doors opened. Passengers got on and off, and the curious around them dispersed. One man offered to dial 911. He seemed relieved, though, when Braintree assured them that there was no need. The Opuses were still shaken, but allowed themselves to be seated side by side on the bench. Should we get them out of here?" Jackson toned anxiously. "How do we know they won't try to jump in front of the next train?" "They're not in danger anymore," the head Sandman said. "They've complied with the suggestion." "Are you sure?" Jax probed. "We stopped them at the last minute." "That's exactly why it had to be at the last minute. A suggestion is like a hypnotic contract. To fulfill the contract, they were required to throw themselves off the platform in front of the train. They did that. The fact that we pulled them back was irrelevant. They're free." The imminent crisis passed. Jax experienced a surge of relief accompanied by a wallop of blowback that nearly knocked him over. "I guess that's the antidote," he thought with a pained half-smile. "When you're scared out of your wits, you don't notice how miserable you are." The other platform began to rumble, and screeching roar signaled the arrival of the Uptown Express. The noise seemed to startle the Opuses back to themselves. Despite Braintree's assurances, Jack was mildly thrilled that his parents didn't try to rush over to the opposite track for another shot at Mako's commands. Mr. Opus shook himself like a wet dog. "What are we doing at the subway?" "We have a Bentley." "They're cleaning it, Dad," Jack reminded him. "The barf, remember?" "We couldn't find you at the hospital," Mrs. Opus recalled, "and you met us at home with that awful man who attacked your father. Farmer Ponytail," her husband added. Braintree stepped forward. "I'm still here. His name is Axel Braintree, and he just saved your lives, both of you," Jax informed them. "There are lots of things you have to know," said the old man. "Let's find a place where we can talk." At a bagel shop near the subway station, the Opuses listened to the story, their expressions growing more flabbergasted and awestruck with each new detail. Jax's power remote hypnotism, the deadly suggestion to ensure his cooperation, the video virus, the storm of blowback that still assaulted their son, and most appalling of all, Mako's scheme to plant his puppet in the Oval Office. I can't believe it," Mr. Opus managed finally. "Dr. Elias Mako has devoted his life to New York City education and is an inspiration to every single one of us." "No, he's not," Jack said gently. "He bent you to think that. Probably while he was implanting the suggestion to make you jump in front of the train. He's a bad guy, Dad. I mean, like, Baltimore bad." His mother was nearly as pale as her son, teeth chattering against the heavy coffee mug. "We have to go to the police," she insisted. "What if what you say is true, someone tried to murder us?" "No police," her husband said sharply. "Maybe I tried to forget my whole childhood, but if there's one thing I remember from my parents, it's this. Never mention hypnotism to the authorities. Too many Opuses have already spent their lives straitjacketed and in rubber rooms." "Besides," Jax added, "the mayor and police commissioner are both on Mako's wall of shame. They're probably as much under his thumb as Senator Douglas." "So we just do nothing?" she demanded in outrage. "We nearly died. Our son is stumbling around like he's got the plague. Someone's trying to hijack the entire political system." The fourth person at the table, the president of the Sandman's Guild, chewed thoughtfully on a whole wheat raisin bagel. "There's one thing we might be able to do." The others regarded him expectantly. "Mako controls Trey Douglas through mesmerism. The senator would be just as vulnerable to any Sandman, especially one as powerful as Jax." Jax blinked. "You think I can out-hypnotize Mako and take Douglas away from him?" "Well," Braintree replied, "it's not as simple as that." "You bet it's not," Jax exclaimed. "I tried to bend Mako once and he wrecked me." That's to be expected, the old man assured him. You've only learned what you can do in a matter of months ago. He's been developing and honing his skills for decades. Look no further than your ability to hypnotize remotely to understand the extent of your power. You are very large potatoes. Jax was bitter. Every week you get up in your laundromat and preach about resisting the temptation to hypnotize, but I have to go out and bend a U.S. senator? That's because you are unique among our kind, Jackson Opus, Braintree replied readily. Most Sandmen your age would be mesmerizing teachers and prom dates or getting into the movies without paying, but you honestly have no interest in personal gain. Your talent is unequaled, and so are you. And what rich reward am I getting for it? Jax added sarcastically. Enough blowback to put me in the hospital and an evil genius gunning for my parents? Greatness is a burden, the old man acknowledged. I wish I could do this for you, but, unlike you, I can't be trusted with vast power. My experience with the Department of Corrections is proof of that. I can only use my skill for a limited time before the world begins to resemble a fabulous mall where all the price tags read free. If I hypnotize Trey Douglas, how do I know I could resist the temptation to be just as bad as Mako? You alone can be relied upon to do the right thing, to bend the senator and compel him to drop out of the race. Monica Opus heard enough. If Elias Mako is going to be there, I don't want Jax anywhere near the place. That man has seen the last of our family. I don't care if he gets a pink poodle elected as president. He's never going to have a chance to hurt us again. That garbage barge is already loaded into Yonkers, the head Sandman said gravely. Mako will need Jax again for the general election in the fall, and threaten you two will still be the best way to make him cooperate. Our only hope is put a stop to it tonight. Now, just 1 minute, Mr. Opus spoke up. I know a lot of these hotshot political types from the dealership. They don't even go to the bathroom without an entourage. Now that Douglas has clinched the nomination, he'll have Secret Service, too. No one's going to be able to get near him. Braintree nodded reluctantly. I hate to break my own rules, but this is going to take hypnotism. You're talking about a 12-year-old kid, Jax's father persisted. Even if he got you helping him, there's no way he could get around all that security. The old man produced his cell phone and scrolled through a very full contact list. Luckily, I happen to know a lot of frustrated Sandmen who would jump at the chance to use their talents for a worthy cause. And a couple of wallets go missing or the occasional Rolex, it's a small price to pay for saving our democracy. Alright, chapter 29 is next.